I heard that I was going to get married, and my grandfather, who raised me alone, took a 6-hour green train from his hometown regardless of his serious illness, just to come to my wedding. But on the wedding day my girlfriend disappeared. She appeared in her boyfriend's circle of friends, and the two of them were in a luxury store. Male best friend supporting article. I told you not to spend money. Jiaojiao didn't listen, and she had to give me a belt of 10,000 yuan. Grandpa was so angry that he got sick. The wedding turned into a funeral in a blink of an eye. She didn't show up until she finished cooking Grandpa's aftercare. I silently took off my wedding ring and shook off her hand. Break up, you don't deserve it. 1. In the early morning, I drove alone to the house without temperature. I took off the simple suit I wore for my grandfather's funeral, and went into the bathroom to take a shower. It has been 12 hours since I sent the breakup message to Lin Sui. She left me alone more than once, but I didn't expect that she would not even show up at the wedding for her boyfriend. Every time we went on a date before, we would be deliberately or inadvertently disturbed by that man. Sukai sometimes said that he was allergic, sometimes he said that he stayed up late and had a headache, and sometimes he said he had a cold. He can always find a bunch of small problems and ask Lin Sui to accompany him. Lin Sui cherishes him very much and doesn't want him to suffer a little. At the beginning I would quarrel with Lin Sui, but every time her balance would tilt towards that man. In the end, in the quarrels I gradually understood my role positioning. The deep affection with her for many years has also turned into numbness and resentment. I curled up on the floor, leaned against the sofa, and fell asleep unconsciously. When I woke up I saw Lin Sui sitting on the sofa, putting on makeup in front of the mirror, and threw the suit I took off on the sofa on the ground. When she saw me wake up she asked puzzledly, "Why don't you go to the bedroom to sleep? Who are you deliberately pretending to be pitiful?" I almost scared me to death as soon as I entered the door. Seeing that I didn't say anything he continued to say disdainfully, "Isn't it a wedding? Just do it later. Do you want to do this? The wedding dress I rented is also of poor quality, which makes me allergic. Next time I will hire a better wedding company. My wedding can't be bad." After saying that, she continued to put on makeup. At this time Sukai carried a thermos bucket, opened the door with the key and came in. He looked more like the owner of this house than me. It makes me particularly embarrassed. Sukai looked innocent when he saw the tension between me and Lin Sui. "Brother Su Ming, I'm sorry. I broke my hand when cooking yesterday afternoon. Lin Sui was afraid that I would have tetanus, so she sent me to the hospital. Later, he saw that I was wearing old clothes, so he took me to the mall to buy a few clothes by the way. Look, didn't I bring breakfast to make amends?" He said as he raised the thermos in his hand. "I made seafood porridge. Come and eat some." He smiled and wanted to pull me, so I dodged sideways. "I'm allergic to seafood and I can't get rid of it," I said and prepared to go to the room. Unexpectedly, Lin Sui was unhappy in an instant. She slapped her eyebrow pencil on the table and shouted, "What are you angry about?" In order to cook porridge, Xiao Kai broke his hand when dealing with seafood. "Forget it if you don't appreciate it. What are you doing?" I turned my head to look at Sukai's hand and put a bandage on his 4 fingers. I must have gone to the hospital a little later yesterday, and the wound must have healed. Seeping my gaze, Sukai quickly retracted his finger. I sneered and turned to Lin Sui and said, "Let's break up. Grandpa is gone, and the wedding doesn't have to continue." 2. After saying that, no matter how they reacted, I went straight into the bedroom and picked up the suitcase that had been sorted out early. When I came out I saw Lin Sui and Sukai having breakfast leisurely. She glanced at me and snorted. I pulled the suitcase to the door, and suddenly remembered that I had put some chili sauce in the refrigerator, so I turned around and went back. Lin Sui looked at me and turned around and raised her chin and said sarcastically, "Do you regret it so soon? It's too late for you to admit your mistake earlier. Don't be shameless. Have I been too tolerant of you over the years?" I ignored her and went straight to the refrigerator. She looked at me with a pale face and took out a can of chili sauce from the refrigerator. My parents left early, and my grandfather pulled me up with one hand. Grandpa used to be not very good at cooking. When I was ignorant he said that he didn't cook well. Later, he found a chef in the village and studied for a long time. This can of chili sauce was brought to me the last time he came to see me. There are still several wrinkled banknotes stuffed in the plastic bag wrapped in the sauce jar, which should have been specially left to me by Grandpa for thrift. I held the jar and stuffed the banknote into my trouser pocket, and my eyes were red. I was about to leave with the sauce jar, but I was tripped to the ground by Lin Sui's outstretched foot. In an instant my head hit the cupboard, and the chili sauce in my hand was not stable, and it was torn apart in an instant. The red juice flowed all over the ground, mixed with the spiciness of the chili, which made me burst into tears. "You are the only one who takes a bottle of broken sauce as a treasure. I should have thrown away this bottle long ago, which made my refrigerator smell bad." Lin Sui covered her nose in disgust. I supported my body in front of me, but a few drops of bright red liquid suddenly dripped in front of me, which was particularly dazzling on the white marble table. I touched my forehead and sure enough I touched a hand of blood. Before I stood up, Lin Sui began to talk. Why do you have to use such an excuse if you want to stay? You won't even leave me. I didn't prepare for the wedding. You didn't make such a fuss, did you? Besides, I took Xiaokai to the hospital yesterday. If it was really tetanus, you would die, do you know? She always thought that the wedding was not worthy of her, and she also felt that I was angry about the wedding from the beginning to the end. It seems that I have been with her for so many years, and I don't care about her. She is like a stone that can't be covered. It seems that the 8 years I have been with her have never been moved by her. Every time I look forward to the stars and the moon waiting for her, what I expect is the news that she and Sukai will participate in various activities. It seems that there has never been a place for me in her world. Most of the time, whether I care or greet her, she never replies to me. Every time she goes on a business trip, I can only know her recent situation in their moments, but every time I take a photo with Sukai without hesitation. Even if they eat together, I can bear it, but in fact we sleep and live together every time we go out. If I don't break it, it doesn't mean that I don't know. Now I don't think I need to continue to hold back my anger. My anger, which I have suppressed for a long time, may take this opportunity to burst out. In your eyes, his life is fate, and my grandfather's life is not fate? I asked her coldly. Her face turned gloomy in an instant. I waited for a long time before she spoke, so I was ready to pull the suitcase and continue to go out. When I walked to the door, Lin Sui was angry again. She couldn't help shouting, "Do you have to mess with me today? Can I take Sukai to the hospital tomorrow to apologize to your grandfather? If you don't believe it, I can ask him to take his treatment bill and bow down to your grandfather, so that you can be satisfied?" When I heard her say that, I immediately clenched my fist. Seeing that I had a sign of an outbreak, Lin Sui immediately changed her expression and wanted to hold my hand to comfort me. But at this time, Sukai suddenly began to stir up the water. What if Grandpa hasn't arrived yet? Is Su Mingga angry simply because you were absent from the wedding? Then I'll apologize to brother Su Ming. Does he mean that I am using my grandfather's life to blackmail Lin Sui to marry me? At this moment I couldn't stand it anymore. I picked up the bowl on the table and smashed it at him. 3. The bowl hit Sukai's shoulder, but he shouted, covered his heart and squatted down. Lin Sui was also furious when she saw that I attacked Sukai. She came to me regardless and raised her hand to slap me. Her hands were stained with my blood, and she shook it with disgust. We will solve the matter between us by ourselves. Don't involve him. At this time she will still only protect Sukai. Then what am I? Is it a part of their play? I just think the efforts of the past 8 years are absurd and ridiculous. Sukai covered his heart and coughed a few times, which made me almost laugh. But Lin Sui went to help him very distressedly, and her face, which had just been full of anger, instantly changed to pity. How about it? Where did it go? Chest. It hurts a little. Sukai looked at me and acted cautiously. The more he is like this, the more he can arouse Lin Sui's anger at me. Sukai continued. It's okay, Sui Sui. I can explain it to brother Su Ming. I wanted to pick up Grandpa together before. He was old and unfamiliar with his life. I was afraid that something would happen to him, so I checked the ticket. But I didn't find the flight information, and I was afraid that Sui Sui would be cheated. Brother Su Ming, you also know what kind of family the Lin family is. The family has a big career. I'm also afraid that someone wants to marry her for her family's fortune. I wiped the bleeding on my head and I was really angry with him. I turned my head and asked Lin Sui, do you think I'm lying to you? She looked away with some sind. I continued to ask, so you also think I'm for your family property? Although my grandfather and I depended on each other and grew up in the countryside. But my grandfather told me since I was a child that I should be proud. I was with Lin Sui and I never wanted her money. I work every day and try to support both of us. Since the past few years, Grandpa's physical condition has declined rapidly. Last year, I went back and forth between my hometown and city many times, just to accompany my grandfather to do the inspection. It's not that I haven't told Lin Sui about these things, but I still overestimate her. I thought she would believe me, so I didn't show her Grandpa's medical record. I think it's enough for me to worry alone, and there's no need to let others bear my negative emotions together. As a result, I suppressed my emotions, but in Lin Sui's place, it turned out that I was lying to her and trying for her family property. Yes, my grandfather did not take a plane. In order to save money, the old man thought the plane was too expensive, so he bought a train ticket by himself. I explained a few words and felt that there was no need to talk nonsense with them, so I waved my hand. Forget it. That's it. Grandpa's thrift is to save me the dowry money. Even if he is already in poor health, he would rather endure the pain and take the train. Just to witness the happiness, I begged on my knees. But Lin Sui still missed the appointment. She doesn't even want to act in a play with me. At this moment, all I have left is discouragement. After 8 years of love, I will feed the dog, and the dog will also wag its tail at me. And Lin Sui, she will only bark at me. It seems that we have been destined to end since the day we met. She is a beautiful girl, and I am just an orphan raised by my grandfather. I have always been trying to deceive myself and others, trying to get a little love from her. I always feel that no matter how long it takes, I can definitely touch him. It was not until Sukai appeared that I found that she also had a side that could show love without humble begging. She will buy Sukai a hot breakfast, care about whether Sukai has slept well, and remember to bring him another thick dress in his suitcase when he is on a business trip. She can even remember all of Sukai's preferences, take him to various workplaces, and recommend him to famous bosses in the industry. I am as humble as dust in front of Sukai, and all my dignity can be crushed on the soles of his feet. Now I finally wake up that Lin Sui's deep affection is probably something I can't get in my life. I should pick up my dignity, choose to let go, and stop begging her humbly. I looked at them coldly. Sukai was still acting. He covered his heart and made a pitiful look, and immediately received Lin Sui's concern. Are you still in pain? I'll take you to the hospital later. I laughed and said, that's not the place I just called, is it? The edge of the bowl is obviously on your shoulder. Do you want to touch the porcelain? 4. When Lin Sui heard what I said, she immediately looked at me with a warning look. You'd better not kick your nose in the face. You hit someone first. You should have apologized, but you even said he touched the porcelain. Then how about letting him take off his clothes? Where on earth did it hit? I said, Brother Suming, I just said something wrong. You don't have to humiliate me like this. Sukai grabbed his neck and looked at me, and his appearance really made me sick. Lin Sui was furious and rushed over very quickly, pushing me down. I was so angry that I was suddenly kicked to the ground by Lin Sui. The chili sauce hurt when it touched the wound, which made me struggle violently. She squatted down and grabbed my hair, asking me to look straight at her. Don't you like to eat this piece of shit? If you have enough, get up and apologize to Sukai, or get out of here. She looked angry like a terrible beast, and the blue veins on her forehead bulged. Sukai, who was beside her, came over and pulled her. Sui, don't hit me. Brother Suming certainly didn't mean it. His tone was very aggrieved. Lin Sui glanced at him and said to me coldly, Did you hear me? I asked you to apologize to Sukai. I looked at her with an expressionless face. At this time the wound on my forehead cracked again, and blood flowed all over my face. Sukai, who was beside her, didn't really want to persuade her to stop fighting. Every word seemed to be stirring up trouble. Don't quarrel for me. I'll feel very guilty. Get out of here. I roared. The blood on my forehead is more surging, and my current appearance must be terrible. Lin Sui let go of her hand holding my hair, and I immediately waved her away. Unexpectedly, her center of gravity was unstable. I waved it and twisted it to the side and it just hit Sukai. The two fell back, and the back of Sukai's head was also put on the cabinet next to him. He shouted. Lin Sui immediately got up in a panic and checked. She was relieved to see that there was no bleeding. Then she turned her head and shouted at me. Suming, don't go too far. Because of your wedding, Sukai didn't go to the concert after waiting for months. He also asked for leave for a business trip. I didn't expect you to be so ignorant. Didn't you see that he made so much effort? Don't let those who give for you regret it. I sat up on the floor and a trace of sarcasm flashed in my eyes. Regret? Then his biggest regret should be that he couldn't be your groom. Blood dripped down my mouth, and my shirt was full of blood except for oil. I should have gone to the wedding site yesterday to tell Grandpa the truth. How did you, an unfilial grandson, lie to him? Lin Sui's eyes were gloomy, and her eyes were like knives, and she cut my heart one by one. I laughed. She panicked for a few seconds when she saw that I didn't react correctly. Then he regained his composition and continued, You'd better respect me and Sukai. Don't forget that you begged me on your knees for this wedding. You don't want your grandfather to be disappointed, do you? If you don't want to, you'd better be good to me. Make me angry. You don't have a good life. I spit a mouthful of blood on the ground. That's not good. You and Sukai have a good time. A trace of surprise flashed in her eyes. She looked at Sukai and asked, No, not? You're not afraid, are you? What else do I have to be afraid of today? On the contrary, I feel strange. Are you afraid that your grandfather is not sick at all? Afraid of being exposed in public? I have made an appointment with your grandfather as an expert. You can know it at a glance. Do you dare? I shook my head and smiled bitterly. Of course I don't dare. She suddenly showed a I know expression, and then I stared into her eyes and said, Because my grandfather is dead. 5. She was stunned for 2 seconds and slapped her again. You are really proud to say that you are unfilial. How did your grandfather teach you to be such a good guy? Even the life and death of the old man can be joked. Are you heartless? So cold-blooded to Sukai, so cold-blooded to your grandfather? I really misread you. I was so angry with her every word that I strangled her neck. Shut up. You are not qualified to mention my grandfather. Seeing this, Sukai was so scared that he immediately broke my hand. Su Ming, Brother Ming, if you have something to say. I took a cold look at him and let go of my hand. It wasn't because I listened to his words, but in an instant I realized that Lin Sui didn't deserve to dirty my hands. If I go to jail because of such a bitch, Grandpa will definitely not rest in peace. I looked at her, and the warmth in my heart for her for 8 years disappeared completely. I even wanted to slap myself 8 years ago. How could I like such a person? Lin Sui coughed twice, as if she was finally afraid of me. She hid behind Su Kai, then took out her mobile phone and peeled the phone. She said in a slightly hoarse voice, "Last night, I canceled the pleasant expert consultation for Grandpa Su Ming. Cancel immediately." The other side of the phone was stunned and asked, "Miss Lin, didn't the patient die yesterday?" Hearing Lin Sui's silence, he asked cautiously, "Don't you know yet? It was cremated yesterday. What are you farting about?" Lin Sui shouted excitedly, "Did you accept Su Ming's bribe? Let me tell you, if you come with him to fool me, I'll make you unable to eat and walk around." After saying that, she hung up the phone. Seeing this, Su Kai quickly comforted Lin Sui in a soft voice. Sui, don't worry. I'll go to the hospital to confirm it today." Lin Sui hid behind him and looked at me coldly over his shoulder. Su Kai protected her like a hen. The intimate posture of the two made me feel uncomfortable. I felt nauseous and quickly looked away. I stood up from the ground holding the cabinet and looked at the chaotic chili sauce on the ground, leaving only infinite regrets in my heart. I feel very sorry for my grandfather. His wish in his lifetime was to see me establish a family and a career and live a happy life. But I don't know people, so I found such a girlfriend. She not only ruined our wedding, but also ruined Grandpa's last thoughts left to me. Staying here at this time one more second is a torment for me. I staggered to hold my suitcase and was ready to leave. Lin Sui's voice sounded from behind me again. On the day of the wedding, my wife went to buy a belt for my boyfriend's best friend, and my grandfather was so angry that he had a heart attack. 39,103. Ryuri's. Is it empty? I turned my head and looked at her faintly, pointed to the half-solidified blood on my head and asked, "Don't you want to leave and wait for you to beat me again? Am I so cheap in your eyes? You." She was speechless for a moment, but obviously didn't want to let me go easily. "So what do you want? Can I make up the wedding for you? As long as I'm sure that your grandfather is really sick, we will make up for it immediately." "Shut up." She lost her voice, so I interrupted her anxiously. I really didn't want to hear my grandfather from her mouth. I was angry. "What are you? Do you want me to confirm whether my grandfather is sick?" I stabbed her heart again with the sentence. She raised her hand and tried to rush over and slap me again, but was pulled by Su Kai. He shook his head at Lin Sui and winked. I saw it in my eyes and didn't bother to poke it. Then he heard Lin Sui say, "I won't argue with you today. Let's talk about it when you calm down and save you." I didn't wait for her to finish speaking, turned around and left. As a result, Su Kai, after chasing me up, he pulled me and said, "Brother Su Ming, don't be angry with Sui. She is also for your good. If you are still angry, I apologize to you." I shook off his hand and glanced at him. "Put away your green tea sample. I won't eat your set." He came closer and whispered, "It's enough to eat this set." After saying that, he looked pitiful again and turned to Lin Sui and said, "What should I do? Brother Su Ming still refuses to forgive me." 6. Lin Sui was still staring at me fiercely. I snorted coldly and dragged the suitcase to open the door. She shouted behind me when I left, "You remember me. Don't regret it. My biggest regret is being with you." I left without looking back. After I left, I rented a small apartment on my mobile phone for a short time. The landlord rents urgently, which is easy to talk to. After saying goodbye to the place that broke my heart, I felt relaxed and slept in the small apartment first. When I woke up, it was late. I turned on my mobile phone and browsed a piece of news. I found a paparazzi secretly took photos of Lin Sui and Su Kai. The two were very intimate and walked into the old house of the Lin family. I have been with Lin Sui for 8 years, and the old house of the Lin family is a place where I can't venture into. But Su Kai was able to enter with her in such an intimate posture. I was discouraged for a moment. Su Kai can easily get all the things I desire. Moreover, the old house of the Lin family has always been heavily guarded. If it hadn't been for Lin Sui's acquiescence, the paparazzi would not have had a chance to take such a photo. I don't know the purpose behind her acquiescence to this behavior, because now we have parted ways, and from then on, she has nothing to do with me. I turned off my mobile phone and sighed, but I felt particularly relaxed. She and I are finally done. Early the next morning, I began to clean up the cabin. Although its area is not as large as that of Lin Sui's previous house, the sparrow here is small and well-equipped. At a glance, the landlord knew that he was a person who loved life. The house was decorated very warmly. I only need to clean it briefly, and it was already very clean. I huddled on the sofa to rest, and then picked up my mobile phone to watch today's news. I found that the report about Lin Sui and Su Kai did not splash water. When I searched again, the message had been deleted. The reason for the deletion is untrue news. I sneered mockingly. The paparazzi were actually taking photos, but they even said, untrue news. The speed of this method of blocking information, I can only think of one person, Lin Sui's father. Because of his big family and career, this man thinks that Lin Sui should be worthy of the best in the world, so he looks down on all people who are close to Lin Sui, whether ordinary friends or boyfriends. The only time we met, Lin's father treated me coldly all the way. We sat together and chatted for less than 15 minutes. Father Lin left impatiently. When he left, he said to me sternly, I will never agree to be with your daughter. I felt very sad at that time. When Lin Sui saw this, she told me that her friends when she was a student finally stayed away from her because of Lin's father's sarcasm. At that time I felt very pitiful of her and had few true friends, so I hugged her and promised that I would not leave her. But now we are still separated, not because of Father Lin. Now I even think that Lin Sui may have never liked me, just to resist his father's rebellious behavior. But why can Su Kai go to the Lin family's old house now? Does Lin's father also eat Su Kai's set? I laughed self-deprecatingly. What they are doing now is none of my business. I couldn't help falling asleep again while using my mobile phone. I have been working with her for about 8 years and I have been working hard all the time. Now that I leave her, I suddenly relax and always want to rest. When I opened my eyes again, the sun had set, and the room was stained with twilight. The feeling of hunger was used like a tide, and my stomach gurgled twice, so I picked up the key and prepared to go to the nearby vegetable market to see what I could buy. Unexpectedly, as soon as I opened the door, Lin Sui was standing outside the door. She was holding her mobile phone, as if she was about to call me. When she heard me open the door, she turned her head with expectation on her expression, not as ferocious as yesterday. What are you doing here? I locked the door with the key while asking her. 7. She just stood silently beside me and watched my movements. I was a little impatient and asked again, what's the matter with you? Get out of the way if it's okay. I'm going to buy vegetables. She was silent for a while and said in a flattering tone that I had never heard of. We have been together for 8 years, and I didn't even know that you could cook. I sneered twice and asked, have you asked yourself if I haven't done it for you? She just wanted to refute, and immediately reacted. Once I wanted to cook for her, and the good food was served, but she was picky about the cheap ingredients. At that time I also made an excuse for her, thinking that she was everyone's daughter from the snacks to the best, and it was normal that I didn't like what I did. But when I saw her drinking seafood porridge cooked by Su Kai that day, I understood that she was just thinking that I was cheap. She hesitated for a while. Seeing that I didn't have the patience to spend time with her, she finally said, can I go into the room and have a chat? What else do we have to talk about? Do you think I look very cheap? Do I have to be beaten by you again to have a long memory? I asked her sarcastically. No, I really want to communicate well. Shall we talk calmly? She said she was going to go. He came to pull me, and I turned around and pushed her away. When will you decide to kowtow in front of my grandfather's tombstone and apologize? When will you come back to me? With that, I went straight from the stairs from the safe passage. Lin Sui didn't come to chase me. By the time I came home with the vegetables I bought, she had already left. I hooked the corners of my mouth. Sure enough, she can't play a little when no one appreciates her. From the day I moved out of her house, I sent a resignation letter to my original company. When I broke up with her, it seemed that I had the courage to break up with the past. My previous job was very close to Lin Sui's family. At that time I specially found it to take care of her. But the salary of this job is actually not good. Now that I broke up with her, I decisively sent a resignation letter. The personnel also tried to keep me, but I refused. Then I submitted my resume to several other companies I liked. Because I graduated from a famous university and had work experience, I soon received an offer from these companies. The next morning I cleaned up briefly and went to those companies. One morning I interviewed 3 companies, and the company seemed to be very satisfied with my impression. At noon I found a cafe to sit down and rest. Not long after sitting down, a very familiar car drove over from outside the cafe. Lin Sui got out of the car and came straight to me. Did you quit your previous job? She sat opposite me. I was eating a sandwich and didn't bother to pay attention to him. Are you interviewing today? Why did you suddenly change your job? Was that job bad before? I didn't even give her a look and arranged the afternoon interview on my mobile phone. Why do you have to work? I can't just raise you. Her tone was high-pitched. I looked up at her and only felt very nauseous. She still feels that my life must surround her, so she takes it for granted that she has instructions on my work. In the past, I would have thought she was caring about me, but now I only feel that she has no sense of boundaries. Seeing that I still ignored her, she took out a folder from her bag and handed it to me. I didn't take it for a long time. She put it on the table and pushed it in front of me. This is the entry contract of the senior manager of our company. You just need to sign it, and you can come to work tomorrow. I took a sip of coffee and then asked slowly, are you sick? If you are sick, go for treatment. Su Ming, don't be shameless. Her face turned gloomy again. Do you think I'm very cheap? Can you call it and waive it? You tripped me last week, and the wound on my head hasn't healed yet. So I'm here to make up for you. She pushed the folder in front of me again. Do you think the annual salary is too low? I can also add to you. If you really want to make up for me, you should let me go. I interrupted her, self-touching. 8. I stood up and was about to leave, but she rushed up and stopped me. Why don't you accept my apology? How can I owe you? After saying that, she seemed to react again. I'm really sorry about Grandpa. I apologize to you again. Whatever you want. I can really make up for you. Her words sounded very sincere, but I was only angry. Yes, if you let my grandfather come back to life, I will forgive you. Her so-called compensation for me is just her little lady's arms on a whim. If I had accepted her contract today, I would really have to crawl at her feet in the future. Get out of the way if you can't do it, I said impatiently. She looked at me, her face slowly turned pale, her arms were also put down, and her eyes were suddenly full of tears. She had to lean on the table in the cafe to stand firmly. I had no pity and left the coffee shop around her. It's gloomy outside and it looks like it's going to rain. I suddenly remembered that we first met on a rainy day. Without an umbrella, Choo-Choo squatted pitifully on the side of the road, and the dim yellow street lamp shone very thinly on her. I had just finished my internship and was about to go back to school. When I saw her squatting like that, I couldn't help holding the umbrella above her head. She talked to me a lot that night, saying that her father's excessive harshness to her since she was a child made her suffocate, including that night she sneaked out after a big quarrel with her father. She said that she didn't have a mother since she was a child, and I said that I was brought up by my grandfather when I was a child. I thought we could empathic with each other's experiences, but I still thought too shallowly. Even if she doesn't have a mother, she is still a famous lady, and even if I have both parents, I am just a commoner. Later, Lin's father knew about my existence. Less than 15 minutes after we met, he left the table angrily and swept Lin Sui out of the house. I thought she resisted her father because she loved me. In fact, she didn't. She just fought for her own freedom. I'm just a stepping stone for her to challenge her father. Our good life only lasted until graduation. After graduation, I joined the company close to her home just to take good care of her. But then she told me with her actions that it was time for the dream to wake up. My afternoon interview lasted until 6 o'clock. But the last few interviews were inexplicably not smooth. I didn't know what had happened until the end when I picked up my mobile phone. The wedding I was waiting for Lin Sui in a cheap suit was uploaded to the internet, and the overwhelming abuse almost burst my phone. They scolded me for using my grandfather's last wish to morally kidnap the Lin family, and asked the Lin family to marry me. I looked at a few and felt upset, so I turned it off. Unexpectedly, I met another luxury car downstairs of the apartment before I got home. As soon as the people in the car saw me, they opened the door and blocked my way. It was Lin's father who came down from above and began to curse. "You are quite capient, aren't you? Threaten Lin Sui to get married with the death of your own grandfather? People like you really have no bottom line. Let me tell you, you can never step into the door of my Lin family." 9. He is as high-ranking as Lin Sui, and he always likes to use people like you to distinguish between 3, 6 and 9 others. I sneered. "Do you think I'm rare? Do you think the door of your Lin family is the Nantian gate? Everyone wants to go. But don't worry. I don't like you for a long time, especially your daughter. I can put up with her for 8 years. I'm kind-hearted and accumulate virtue from my grandfather, but do I still need to put up with you now? In a society under the rule of law, if you have the ability, kill me," I said to him in a broken jar. Just then the familiar Porsche drove over. Lin Sui got out of the car and saw that Lin's father was surprised for a moment and called Dad. "Hasn't the half of July already passed? Why are you so sinister?" I said sarcastically. Lin Sui scolded as if he couldn't hear me. "If you want to save me, you won't use such a means, will you? You're really stupid to say you're stupid. Your brain is so smooth that flies can slip on it." "What do you mean?" Lin's father couldn't help standing up to defend his daughter. I glanced at them coldly and explained compassionately, "My grandfather passed away that day. Do you think I have free time to shoot the wedding? Are you still on the internet? Do you want my grandfather to ask for your life? Mr. Lin, if you want to think about who did it, I'm afraid you have to ask your good daughter. Don't point at Mulberry and curse why." As soon as Lin Sui opened her mouth to refute, a phone call came in from her side, and Sukai's words clearly came into view. "Open without fuss." Father Lin gave an order. Lin Sui bit her lip and finally clicked to answer. Sukai's voice came from the other end of the phone. "Sui Sui, where are you? I just accidentally cut my hand. Can you take me to the hospital? I bleed a lot. It hurts so much." Lin's father's eyebrows were twinkled when he heard it, and I laughed when I saw it. That it turned out that Lin Sui brought Sukai back to her old house without her father's consent. I thought Sukai really dealt with Lin's father so simply and entered the court. Seems that it is just like that. "Do you still have anything to do?" "It's okay. I'm leaving," I said. Lin Sui stopped me and wanted to say something else, and I patted her hand away. "Why don't you take care of your delicate male best friend? What are you stopping me for?" She looked at Lin's father's gloomy face and finally let me go. She watched me walk far away with tears in her eyes, and she was also dragged into the car by Lin's father. After 3 days, I was going to sweep my grandfather's grave. I just bought a bouquet of flowers downstairs and turned around and saw Lin Sui again. She was very embarrassed at this time. She lost a lot of weight, and her eyes were still red and swollen. When she saw me, she quickly greeted her. "Su Ming, I'm sorry. I didn't care about her and decided to turn around and leave, but she grabbed my sleeve and burst into tears. I was wrong. I'm really stupid that I haven't found out that Sukai is such a person. My father has investigated clearly that he posted the video on the wedding day on the internet, And he also bought the Navy to guide public opinion. I know it. I also know that he colluded with the doctor in the hospital, which made me mistakenly think that your grandfather was sick and lied to me. I'm sorry, I know it. She cried so much, but I couldn't get the interest in comforting her. Are you going to the cemetery to see Grandpa? Can I go with you? She choked up and said, no need. I refused her. It's too late. 10. She knelt on the ground, buried her head between her knees in despair, and apologized to me repeatedly. I sighed deeply. From the moment my grandfather passed away, my feelings for her dissipated like a cloud of smoke. Perhaps this emotion has begun to fade as early as a few years ago. The so-called deep affection in those years is just a kind of persistence of the past. At this time she is in Mira in front of her. For the first time, she showed childlike helplessness and grievance. Tears slid down her cheeks, almost making it difficult for her to breathe. But all this is no longer important to me. I ignored her pain and despair, broke her hand holding my cuff tightly, turned around and left. I don't know how long she cried in place and I don't want to know. I just hope that today is the last time I see her. The cemetery was very quiet. I found the location of my grandfather, who smiled kindly on the tombstone. I put the flowers in front of the tombstone, knelt down and kowtowed to Grandpa. I'm sorry, Grandpa, I asked you to make you happy at the wedding, but I seem to have messed up. As I spoke, tears fell. I broke up with Lin Sui. We have been together for 8 years. Originally, I really thought we could get married, but now I realize that we are not from the same world at all. Grandpa, let me live for myself once. Even without Lin Sui, I will be happy. I was finally admitted to the company I was most looking forward to. After working for a period of time, I won several large orders and successfully became a regular one. Everything about me has become better and better since I left Lin Sui. I just heard that Lin Sui had a serious depression and was put in a mental hospital by Lin's father. Su Kai was also blocked in the industry and disappeared from my world from then on. The landlord who rented my apartment came back, and I got along well with her unexpectedly. She is a very kind girl. She was in a hurry to rent a taxi because she went to the countryside with the volunteer activities organized by the hospital. I feel in her the respect that Lin Sui has never given me. We will encourage each other's work and understand each other's hobbies. In this way we got married 3 years later. On the day I received the certificate, I took her to the cemetery and solemnly introduced her to my grandfather. This is my wife, Zhou. She held my hand with a smile and shouted shyly, Grandpa. The white bouquet in front of the grave swayed gently in the wind. Zhou and I looked at each other and walked towards our future.